Thanks for staying with us. Let's go to this now. The new proposed laws that have been tabled in the National Assembly in an effort to bring stability at local government level. Tabled by DA's Chief Whip Siviwe Gwarube last week, we've seen a lot of instability in some councils as power changed hands, raising concerns about service delivery as well. So is the Local Government Municipal Structures Second Amendment Bill the answer? Let's have this discussion now. We speak to Dr. Levy Ndou, a political analyst and TUT politics and public policy lecturer. Dr. Ndou, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. How critical is it to bring this bill now, given the fact that we've seen some of the instability in council?
Good evening, Bongiwe. Good evening to the viewers at home. This should be a response to what politicians and ordinary citizens have observed happening mainly in the different municipalities. And responsible politicians, or those who love to see peace and stability in the running of governance in the country, would want to come up with proposals that should alleviate tensions, instability and infightings in these councils. And of course, without any form of agreement or a framework that has to be set or put forward, we might continue to see this instability. So my sense is that, having observed all the wrong things that were happening by different political parties, all included, this will be the step in the right direction.
One of the big issues as far as coalition arrangements, for example, is concerned is that the issue of the kingmakers is one that continues to trouble, for example, the Democratic Alliance. I remember at some point speaking to the DA's Helen Zille saying that their powers need to be looked at very closely. Now this bill says the party with the most votes within the coalition governs and establish a minimum threshold for parties to join any coalition. Will this help?
Well, it would help, but also at the same time, it will also defeat the purpose of having pre-elections arrangements. But what, in my view, could be what informed these proposals would have been that the will of the people, it should always be seen to be observed, and of course, parties that would have got more votes should actually be in charge of these municipalities. I think it is also in response to the manner in which smaller political parties in particular, or those that will join with other parties to form a government, would behave in a manner that would frustrate the governance of these councils and also make demands to the parties that they are working with in these councils. Look, for an example, what is happening in the city of Johannesburg. You'd get a situation where a party that got the least number of votes is in charge of the council or given the mayoral position. That does not express the wishes of the people on the ground, because in terms of how the people responded to that party, they've actually responded quite minimally. And of course, it has a potential to create a situation where other parties would not care about campaigning. As long as they've got minimum seats in council, they know that at the end of the day, because they've supported other political parties, they would behave in a manner that frustrates governance and indeed get to positions of power through the back door.
So when it comes into some of the agreements that they reach, because there's been a lot of concern about the fact that are they basing their agreements on, for example, ideologies politically, or are they basing them on, basically access to resources or access to more power? How important is it going to be also for these agreements that are being made behind closed doors that affect you and I at a municipal level to also be made public?
The reality is that ever since we had coalition governments in South Africa, and specifically when you look from 2016 up until now, the agreements that are being entered into for these coalitions are done behind closed doors, and ordinary citizens would not know what is happening. If you talk about an ideology, that is something that is put on the back seat because it is only about political parties and politicians wanting to access power and ensuring that they're actually in charge. In the main, I would agree with you that it appears as if rather, it is mainly about resources, because if you look at the smaller municipalities that are being run by coalitions, you don't get the kind of tensions that we get in the metros, because the metros have got bigger budgets, and of course, because politicians will love to access these financial resources and be in charge, that is where we're getting all these kind of tensions taking place. My view as well is that as they look towards this proposal, the wishes of the people should always be taken into cognizance, because at the same time, there is a matter that relates to feedback and accountability, which smaller parties cannot be able to do because in any way, they do not have bigger constituencies.
And there's also, of course, the proposal that there become some, extension to the deadline of selecting representatives, for example, in council, that this particular extension should apply then to holding the first council meetings post the elections and also allow for more time to select, for example, the speakers, the mayors, etc. But is this a good move, in your view, to then have this extension so that they apply themselves as to who should then run that particular municipality?
The current system appears to have created many problems, not only for the ordinary citizens, but also for the politicians themselves. It is also correct that the time given for these councils to be constituted appears to be quite shorter. But the proposal as it is, talk about the number of votes or seats that have been accumulated by political parties, and of course give those that have got bigger numbers a chance to ensure that they actually run the council. So either way, you might not even need a longer period of time, because votes will be talking for themselves, and those that have got bigger numbers will therefore be given a better chance to constitute council. And that, in my view, would work in the best interest of all of us. I think also the response onto the chaos that we've seen in most metros have created a situation where some political parties would go out and boast and say, we are actually the ones who are running council, we are in charge, even though the numbers are actually saying something to the contrary.
It's going to be interesting to see then how this one goes, especially once it also gets to the NCOP, but also, if it's agreed upon, does it bring stability in council? Do the pre-election agreements fall away, as you know, I've alluded to, but also what then happens to the motions of no confidence, for example, and the number of times at which we've seen them in some of these councils. But let's continue to monitor developments on this one then. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ndou. Do appreciate it. That was Dr. Levy Ndou, political analyst and TUT politics and public policy lecturer.